Hey, Emma.
Hey,
Oh my goodness. Wait, I might have to join. My camera's not working.
hey,
You can hear me, right?
yeah,
All right, hold on. I might have to do this from my phone. Copy link. All right, I'm staying on here until I get in on my phone.
sounds good.
Click here to join. Okay. Let me log off of this one. Okay, hi.
Okay, now it seems like it's working.
Yes, well, now I'm on my phone. I don't know. My computer has been weird. So,
Yeah, so I don't know who I was watching. It's live on my YouTube page right now, but afterwards when we posting the YouTube videos. So hello to anyone who's actually watching, but if so,
awesome.
yeah.
All right. Do you want me to start talking?
Yeah, you can get started
Or
by introducing yourself. If you want to share your pronouns, if you want, you don't have to, it doesn't matter to me. Um,
all right. So I'm Jessica Keogh, and I am the founder of Faith Above My Ability. And I have had the privilege to connect with Emma. And I'm excited to chat with Emma and share, my mission and my passion with all of you. So, Emma, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
yes, you're welcome. Yeah. So for starters, I kind of wanted to start with like some sort of icebreaker because I think they're fun. Um, it shouldn't take long. It's just never have I ever questions. You don't have to hold up any of your fingers. Just say if you have or haven't.
Okay.
So just pick like two of them. Two of them because I think they're fun.
Okay. Sounds good.
Here we go. Never have I ever had an imaginary friend.
So, do I say like false if I have had one?
If you've had an imaginary friend, just say that you have.
I have had one when I was young, like, second grade. I don't even remember this friend's name, but I'm sure I have.
I feel like everyone's had one when they were
Yeah.
little.
Did you have one?
I'm pretty sure I've had a few, yes. I just can't remember their names.
No.
Yeah. And here's the other one. Never have I ever attempted to move something with my mind.
I've never actually attempted, no, but I have wished that I can move things with my mind, like, because then it would just be easier to reach things and grab things instead of like, yeah, but I've never actually tried. So, no.
I feel like sometimes I'm just like, I wonder if I have magical superpowers. And then it's like, the reality is like, I don't. Oh, well,
There are some people who, I don't know what it's called. I think it's called Reiki, but they think they can like bend spoons or something with their mind.
that's
So,
I've never heard of that.
yes. Yeah.
Um, so I guess talk a little bit about like how you started Faith Above My Ability and how you found it.
Sure. So, I guess for starters, I should share a little bit about me. So, like I said, I'm Jessica, and I have a physical disability. I use a wheelchair to navigate the world around me. I was born with my physical disability, and just because of my like interactions with the world around me and like living in this world that's not 100% accessible, I I've realized that there's a need for sharing my story. So I started about, I guess it was 2017, 2018, after a missions trip that I went on. I started just like blogging about my experiences as a female wheelchair user and just sharing like my experiences. And then I was encouraged by a couple friends of mine to like expand that, and that's when I founded Faith Above My Ability, which is our nonprofit. And the purpose really is just to educate people about disability, change the narrative surrounding disability and the stigma surrounding it, and then advocate for change. So it started out with a blog just based on my lived experiences. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm not sure if you mentioned, but what year did you start this nonprofit?
So I started blogging in about like, it was around 2017. Then it started to become a nonprofit let's see, we're in 2021, 2019. And we got our official 501c3 this past December. So we're officially a recognized nonprofit now.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, we've been in operation like just before then, connecting people to resources and, you know, creating community, doing some trainings and support groups. But now we have our 501c3 as of December 2020. So it was a good close to 2020. So
yeah. So how has it been for you? Like, how would you say it's been different for you, like someone with a disability, going through COVID-19 since last March? How do you think it's been different for you, or how has it been different for you than someone else who is like a neurotypical or who is able-bodied and does not use a wheelchair?
I know at like the beginning of the pandemic, you know, this time last year, it was challenging because I require assistance from like friends and whoever to help me with like my basic daily living activities. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was hard because a lot of people were, of course, you know, fearful of the virus. And then I didn't have some of that care that I needed, some of that assistance. I think, you know, I am lucky because I can do a lot on my own, that I don't think the pandemic has super impacted like my everyday life, other than of course like going out and doing things that I used to do pre-pandemic. But I just remember like the first like month or two was really challenging because, you know, we didn't know what the virus was going to entail and all of the implications, and just getting people to commit to helping me with things that I need was challenging.
Yeah, it definitely does seem like it's really challenging because I feel like there are definitely a lot of people who like I don't know, we need human interaction and we do need help with things like, there are people with disabilities, like if they need an in-person services, it's kind of like the pandemic put a halt to that and like some people on the spectrum, like they struggle with like a huge change and then we have to figure out we have to basically stop living life as we knew it, and then we have to move it fully virtual. And that could be pretty difficult, like, I feel like, for people with disabilities, for everything to be completely virtual.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before, but I've talked to, a few people about this. Like, the virtual world opens up like other opportunities. It's just, for people who, for whatever reason, can drive to an event, at least like the past year or so, a lot of things have been virtual. So that's been a positive for people who, for whatever reason, disability or not, can attend events if they wanted to attend. But it definitely is an adjustment to like change your completely like this whole lifestyle to this virtual world. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, other than the pandemic, what what do you wish people saw in you when it comes to your capabilities versus what you think that they actually see? Does that question make any sense?
Yes. And I know you and I have definitely talked about this before. But so I'm an educator, right? You know this. I've been teaching for 10 years. But a lot of people, whether it's parents or other teachers or administrators, the first thing that is pretty obvious when they meet me is that I use a wheelchair. And I've had people say to me like, "Oh, I didn't think you were going to be good at this job because," and they just don't really like say, but they're talking about the wheelchair and the disability and all of that. And I'm like, "Oh, that's so interesting that you would, see that as a deficit when I'm really like, it's actually one of the biggest strengths I have because I'm able to start conversations with people." So I wish people would like not, it's hard because we all judge people by just like their appearances or the way they present, which, we just need to be mindful not to do that because people are so much more than just, their disability or their wheelchair or, whatever. And I wish people just took time to get to know me and other people who appear different than them, instead of like shying away or thinking that, oh, they can't do this because they're in a wheelchair, or oh, like how is that going to work? She can't walk, so like how is she going to teach? Or she must, I've had people talk to me very loudly before and ask me like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm great, how are you? And it's like, do they think I'm deaf or I can't hear because my legs don't work, like as they should? So I just wish people would, not be so quick to judge by appearances and like what appears different than, them. Does that answer your question? Kind of make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like people all around, and they have like these stereotypes about us. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the media representation for people with disabilities? Because I know for me at least, I feel like we are misrepresented and barely represented either. So I was wondering what your thoughts about that are, and if you think that might be one of the reasons why disability isn't talked about as much.
I think it's definitely why disability isn't talked about is because you don't see it a lot. And when you do, it kind of takes on this role of like, oh, look at that poor person on TV, like that pity sense, right?
Mhm.
And I know for me, like, I don't want anyone feeling bad for me. like, you know, you can empathize with me, but I don't want you to feel bad for me, because that doesn't do anything. Like, I don't feel bad for myself and my disability. I like, it is what it is, and I embrace it. So I think as far as like on the media, you know, whether it's TV or Instagram, we're getting there as far as like changing the narrative of disability. But it's still like this, oh, look at that poor person in the wheelchair, like how sad, like let's feel bad for them kind of thing. But I know like there are some good movies or like clips or, you know, Instagram like influencers that are really working hard to change that representation. And I don't know if I've shared this with you, but part of like what I'm studying for my doctorate and like my dissertation research is the impact of representation in curriculum. Because as an educator, I have seen that we don't teach disability, like it's not included. You know, we read a book in high school called Of Mice and Men, and you don't really have those conversations about why the character is behaving or interacting with the world the way he is. So anyway, I'm researching a lot of that, and just I wonder what the correlation is between like seeing someone who looks like you doing what you want to do. Does that increase success? And, you know, how can we really get that into curriculum at a young age, like starting with children's books, like, you know, because disability isn't talked about. It's not.
And if I remember correctly, I think I've read of Mice and Men, but I'm not. I know one of the characters died. Isn't it the person with a disability that ends up dying? And wasn't he shot?
Yes, because of the way he was interacting. He wasn't, I forget exactly, because it has been a while since I read it, but it was, if I remember, I don't know if it was Lenny, if that was his name. But it was because of his like social interactions, and they weren't quote unquote expected, or typical. So, you know, if we just had a little more empathy and understanding, then like maybe that wouldn't have happened and it would have been dealt with a different way. I don't know. But, you know, there are some good pieces of literature out there that really represent disability well and have the opportunity to like have good conversations with kids starting at a young age. So we have a ways to go.
Yeah, definitely. And my next question is, you know, I feel like the past, like, you know, year, like, along with the pandemic, I feel like it's been a very controversial political climate as well, especially in the month of like November, just those months leading up to the election.
Yeah.
What role do you think the government plays in making sure society is accessible for people with disabilities?
What role do they currently play, or what role should they be playing?
You can answer both.
Okay.
You can answer both if you want.
So I sometimes, you know, with the government, I know there's the ADA, and that's great and all, but that was almost 31 years ago. And there are still buildings and things that are inaccessible. And I know there's specific legislation, you know, that enforces the ADA. I don't believe it's always enforced with fidelity. I think also sometimes because of different parties trying to get the vote, I guess. They portray disability a certain way. And I don't know if that's helping or hindering like the disability movement and changing the narrative. I don't know. This is a hard question.
Definitely, because I feel like a lot of times the government is that they're asked questions, okay, what would you do about the current race climate in the United States? Like, what are your thoughts on the LGBTQ community? And those are important questions, but another important question to ask is like, what would you do to make society more accessible for people with disabilities? Like, and it could start with a simple, just like better media representation.
Right.
Like, for example, like the Capitol Crawl, I didn't even know about that. And I'm autistic. I feel like I should have known about that. And I was wondering, for the people who do not know, if you could share a little bit about what the Capitol Crawl was.
Yeah, so that was a disability civil rights movement before the ADA legislation was signed in 1990. And people with disabilities, people without disabilities protested at the Capitol because it was taking a very long time for this legislation to be passed. And people, with and without disabilities weren't happy about it. So as a form of protest, people gathered at the Capitol, and some people, abandoned their mobility devices, whether it was a walker, wheelchair, whatever, and started crawling up the steps. And that really symbolized the inaccessibility that our country is, that our country has, the inaccessibility that our country has. So it's just like a bold protest that, helped move legislation a little quicker, because I think people were hesitant to sign it. So, yeah.
It's definitely interesting because, I feel like when protests happen, we have one side who are there for protesting, but then we have another side who's just like, it's just so disruptive and everything. But I feel like that's the point of protests. They're supposed to be disruptive. For if we want change, like sometimes it's what you have to do. And it seems like the Capitol Crawl was pretty effective at the time.
Yeah, I think it was. And it was definitely symbolic, climbing up all of those stairs. Like, you can look up pictures, and people who, couldn't walk were crawling up the stairs. And that, I don't know, that just, it's really empowering to me, because it shows that, not only is our country, it wasn't accessible, but, it was powerful just to, like, me as a person with a disability, to learn about that, because I was like, all right, I can make bold moves and hopefully change legislation.
Yeah.
So there is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, definitely. I feel like anytime we do see like positive representation like that, or like a bold movement like that with people from like our community, like it definitely it can make you feel empowered in a way.
Yeah.
Even if we weren't the ones participating in it personally. And it's like, wow, people are actually fighting for us here. They're actually trying to make society better for us.
Yeah, and I'm grateful they did. And I facilitated a course on the disability civil rights movement 2 weeks ago. And in that course, I definitely expressed my gratitude for how far we have come as a nation. However, I also made it clear that I don't want things to be like, I don't want to be complacent, because we still have a very long way to go. Like, I shouldn't have to feel grateful because I can get into a building because there's a ramp, or, like those are just general accessibility things that just should happen because they benefit everyone, even somebody who, can move around without a mobility device. Like a ramp is helpful, stairs only help a certain population. So I don't know, we have a ways to go with that.
And I think something that bothers me is like with the ADA is that like churches are not counted in the ADA form of like having to have an accessibility ramp to get into the building. And I'm just like, I'm pretty sure some people with physical disabilities would like to attend church, so why wouldn't you make your building accessible for them to get inside of it so they can actually attend the service?
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that I've thought about. I'm just like, well, why aren't churches, counted in that? I mean, I guess it's because they're not public buildings, but,
Yeah. And it's the separation between church and state.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I hope that there are at least some churches that do have accessible means of like getting in and out, but
yeah, I think, the church I attend is accessible and other ones that I've attended are accessible. So that's
pretty good.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you guys take donations for your nonprofit, Faith Above My Ability?
We do, yes. We have a button on our website that says donate now, I think is what it says. And people can also donate through like check or whatever. But we do accept donations. And what we're doing with those donations is we are starting up a emergency fund for people with disabilities. And this kind of goes, stumbling over my words, with what you and I were texting about before. But sometimes like people with disabilities experience, like they might have a fall that, and then they break something or whatever. And then they're requiring more help than they needed before. So we're hoping to open up a program for emergency like stipends for people who do have, some kind of like disability related emergency to help offset that cost a little bit, because having a disability can be expensive. Different like equipment that's needed, or unexpected events that occur, and just providing that to our community. So that's one of the ways that we're using the donations.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you said where your donations are going to, because I think it's very important to know where they are going to, because you don't want to donate somewhere and then realize they're not even helping the cause that you're trying to donate to.
Right. No, we are fully committed, like as a disabled person myself, we're fully committed to helping the disability community, and empowering them. And actually every person on our board at Faith Above My Ability has a disability themselves, with the exception of Kate and Sean, who are our treasurer and family support. Their son is the one that has a disability. So we really get disability because we're all living it every single day. So we're fully committed, and we're open to input about like what's needed in the community. We are just a couple different perspectives in a very large community. So we encourage people to reach out and say like, oh, have you thought of this idea? And like, this way to help educate or empower people with disabilities. So we encourage and like welcome those ideas as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was gonna say something, but I can't. Oh, now I remember. It's the last question I'm gonna ask you. What would you say to people out there who don't think people living with disabilities are capable of being independent?
It's funny, I know I want to continue this conversation for sure. So I think the idea is, what is the operating definition of independent? Is it you completely do everything on your own and you need help from no one? Because I don't think that applies to anyone in the world. We all need help in some capacity, disabled or not. Living independently is a choice that you have to make. So I consider myself independent. However, that does not mean I do every single thing on my own, because it would take me forever and I would be physically exhausted. So what would I say to people was the question. Get creative. Like, people with disabilities are some of the most creative problem solvers there are. Talk to other people who are doing what you want to do and kind of make those connections and learn from each other. Like, learn those like disability life hacks. I know, Faith Above My Ability offers community groups. There are other community groups that I participate in for people with disabilities that I've learned a lot from. Like, oh, I didn't consider how to meal prep like that, so I can do it more independently. But yeah, get connected with people, ask questions. And everyone has the ability to live independently to whatever extent they want. It's hard and it's challenging and it's frustrating. But well, it can be. It's not always. But you just have to be flexible and know there's going to be hardships and struggles. But I know, sorry if I'm like rambling, but the perception sometimes is that people with disabilities don't live on their own. I have people ask me, oh, well, you must live with like a roommate. Nope, I don't, just me and my dog. And then they're like shocked. I've had people, say like, oh, well, you live with your parents. No, I don't. I'm 32. I live on my own with my dog. Do I require help? Yes, I do. And it's work to figure it out, but it's possible. So I don't know if that fully answered your question or not.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people don't realize is like, I feel like, we can't do everything on our own. Like, even if you're a neurotypical, you're gonna need help on things.
Yeah. Right. And like, learning to accept that help is, a journey. And, we all, like you said, whether you're able-bodied or not, everyone needs help at some point with something. So I just happen to need help with activities of daily living, but it doesn't mean that I can't be independent.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my next guest should be coming on soon. So her name is Amanda. She's also on the spectrum.
Okay.
To help her get in, but I want to thank you so much for coming, and I hope whoever's watching right now or whoever will be watching in the future will have gotten something out of it.
Yes, I hope so. And thank you for having me. I I made a little story right before logging on here and tagged you in my story. So you might see that on Instagram because I was like pumped up and ready to talk with you. So thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I will send you the link of the video of the YouTube video once this is over.
Sounds great. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye. Just give one minute, y'all. Feel free to use the bathroom or fast forward this video if you're not watching it live. But if you're watching it live, just give me a minute or two. Hello, Amanda. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for agreeing to come on last minute and to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
So first, before we get started with my questions, I have a few never have I ever prompts I decided I'm going to read aloud to my guests and see what their answer would be. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, never have I ever got lost at a carnival.
Never.
Yeah.
Got
I haven't-
lost on the beach, but I've never gotten lost in the carnival.
Oh, you got lost at the beach?
Yeah. I was like 8 and it was on an island called Tortola.
Interesting. Yeah, I once got lost at the Ridley Creek State Park when I was on a hike with someone, and yeah, at one point I had to call someone to pick us up to try to find us because I did not know where we were. Yeah. Don't go hiking somewhere where you don't know where you're going.
Yep.
Okay, and then this one is, never have I ever taken photos of someone without their knowledge.
Yes, I have done that for several scavenger hunts.
Me too. Yeah. Okay. So let's get down to it. So it is April 1st, April Fool's Day, but it's also the first month of what a lot of people like to call Autism Awareness Month.
Yay.
Although it should be called Acceptance, yeah. And I was wondering if you could explain, what does this month mean to you personally?
For me, it can be both empowering and frustrating. Like it's like this is the time of year when people pretend to give a shit about autistics, and they do a lot of stuff for clout, only for things to go back to normal by the time it's May 1st. So for us autistics, we have to work twice as hard to help inform others about autism acceptance and how we would wish to be treated, and that it shouldn't stop at April. And while it is frustrating, when we do get people, when we do actually help people, it can be quite empowering and less stressful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, it's like every month it's like, light it up blue, light it up blue. But I'm just like, as much as I love the color blue, and believe blue is like my favorite color, but not for that reason, just because I just like the color blue. It's just aesthetically pleasing. But I'm just like, I feel like if we light it up blue, I feel like it just kind of like reminds you of, I don't know, well, I'm just gonna call it the organization anyway. Autism Speaks. If you could describe Autism Speaks in 3 words, what would it be?
They absolutely suck.
Good answer, because yes, they do. They are rooted in ableist thinking, and there's this thing called, or like commercial called "I Am Autism," right? Yeah. So why don't you share with whoever our audience may be what that was?
So I Am Autism was a commercial that they released back in 2009. I first saw it on YouTube when I was 12, about 2 years after my mom told me that I was autistic. And since we were pretty invested with Autism Speaks back then, we were doing the walk. I was expecting something. I was expecting something nice, you know. And even the thumbnail in the video didn't raise any red flags. It was just some kid sitting on a bench or whatever. And quickly as it started, it kind of ruined everything. Like there's a narrator who is like an ominous voice who claims to be autism, hence I am autism. The voice says that autism is just as bad as cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined, and how it will ruin your parents. It'll ruin your marriage and other stuff like that. The fact that it was released the year before my mom told me about my autism, and that this was during the time when we were still supporting Autism Speaks, it's kind of terrifying to me. And that's not even, to me, that's not even the worst thing that came out of Autism Speaks. I mean, in 2006 they had a documentary called Autism Every Day that was released I already said the release date, but anyway, the documentary focused on caregivers for their autistic children, and it focused on them, and they were complaining for a big portion of it. But the section that gained the most infamy was the one of the mothers who was actually on the board of Autism Speaks, if not, she was one of the higher ups, that she considered a murder-suicide with her and her autistic daughter. But the only reason why she didn't follow through with her plan was because she had a neurotypical daughter and she didn't want to leave her neurotypical daughter without a mother. So she backed down on that plan. And while this could be used as like a devil's advocate that these things were outdated. They're nearly 10 years old now. Surely they don't still think this. But that's wrong. In 2019, they released a 100-day kit that I actually read the PDF of, and it was kind of disturbing. Like, one section goes through the stages of grief about not having a normal kid and other misinformation. The fact that it was recent just shows that nothing has changed with them.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, and they call it Autism Speaks, but the truth is, like, barely anyone on the board is autistic. And it wasn't even founded by autistic people. It was founded by parents. And like, I'm just like, that is not autism speaking right there.
And I think at one point their very first autistic board member, he ended up quitting because he ended up quitting because he was mainly used as a token, and no one on the board listened to what he had to say, so he left.
Yeah. You know, it was definitely like, when I found all that out, like, I did not even know about all that stuff with that organization, but okay. Getting past that organization, which, by the way, if anyone watching does not know this yet, please don't donate to Autism Speaks. Like, there are a lot of other places to donate to, like Faith Above My Ability, for example, which we heard about earlier, and we were talking to Jessica. You can donate to Spark, Southeastern Pennsylvania Autism Resource Center, Dubsy Autism Program. There are a lot of other better resources to where you can donate to that actually helps people on the spectrum. Yeah. And I want to ask you, Amanda, as well. A lot of times people like to wear shirts that have the puzzle piece on them. And we're still getting represented by these puzzle pieces, even though, I mean, there's some progress with the infinity symbol, but there's still puzzle pieces all around. What do you think the puzzle piece like represents?
For me, I have many mixed feelings about the puzzle piece. Growing up, since my family supported Autism Speaks for the longest time, I didn't find any problem with it. And over the years, as I began to learn more and more about the puzzle piece and what it meant, I didn't fully agree. Like, I disagreed with the puzzle piece's original symbolism. I didn't think that I was broken or missing a few pieces. And yet, since it was the only thing I knew, I couldn't let go of it either. And I had some positive symbolism of my own with what I think it stood for, that I found, like, I thought that the world was missing us, and that without us, the world will be different. Or if you take away pieces of us, or that we're already complete, and if you take away pieces of us, for instance, our autism, we wouldn't be the same person. But over the years, I myself with the puzzle piece due to its very messed up history and the fact that, just like autism speaks, it was never the brainchild of autistic people. So I ended up leaving it behind and fully going for the Rainbow Infinity Loop, which in itself is very hard to find. You would really nice. You would really have to go through some digging if you want to find remotely anything with the Infinity Loop. And that even typing in autism acceptance, you'll still get a lot of puzzle pieces. If you just look up neurodivergency or neurodivergent, then you would yield some better search results. But even then, it's not like the rest of the world has adopted it. The only times I've ever seen the neurodivergent infinity loop was from other autistics. It's not like I can walk into a Walmart or a Target and find a t-shirt with the neurodivergent infinity loop. Most of it comes from an independent artist, an independent autistic artist on Redbubble or Etsy. And that's pretty much the only places you can find it. So it can be kind of frustrating for the most part, but if you do some digging, you can find it.
Yeah. Why do you think issues like these are not paid attention to as much as issues such as racism and homophobia and all those issues? Why do you think ableism is not talked about as much?
I can't speak for other neurodivergencies or disabilities, but for autism, it's kind of straightforward. The world, despite the influential autistic people in the world like Temple Grandin or Dan Aykroyd, or even the man that created Pokemon, as a whole, the concept of an autistic adult is completely unheard of. Autism is pretty much seen as a childhood disorder, that it will go away when you grow up. Then your obviously autistic characteristics will not be seen when you're older. And some people think that then the lack of these obviously autistic signs is them growing out of it. In actuality, it's more or less autistics masking to completely downplay the traits that they still have. And since non-autistic people call the shots, this could leave an autistic even more vulnerable to ableism. And because of these past notions, people can completely turn down any autistics concerns or whatnot, because it's not seen as something that's as big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I also think some of it probably has to do with some of the representation in the media, which I feel like we really don't get really much autistic representation in the media. But people are like, oh, what about the good doctor? But the thing is about the good doctor is like, while the show may be good, the main character, Freddie Highmore, I'm not sure if he's really on the spectrum.
Not.
I hope they're getting coached by people who are actually on the spectrum, but I think those can be issues, like when actors on the spectrum, when autistic actors are not even represented in the media.
Or even worse, or at the very worst, you can have people doing the exact same thing that your bullies have done to you, exaggerating everything you do to make fun of you, and they end up getting an Oscar for it.
Yeah. Did that happen?
My traits aren't as obvious when I was younger. Heck, even then, I would say that my more obvious traits are manifesting now than they did back then. But mainly back then, the most common method for me being bullied back then was either my classmates treating me like I was a 6-year-old, even though we were both in the same high-level reading class, or they were using my good-natured attitude, and they pretend to befriend me just to get one over on me, or use me as a pawn to get one over on someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. My gosh, Charlie. Another question I had was, what are your thoughts on person first language versus identity first language?
For me, I use identity first language. It's the whole person first and identity first language is just a big thing of irony, because person first was used as to put the person before the condition. And while it might work for some conditions, like you wouldn't say cancerous person, you would say so-and-so has cancer, or so-and-so has depression. But for something like autism, it doesn't work like that. To say person with autism, it's to imply that autism is merely an accessory, that it can be taken away with the person there, but to be reminded that you are a person is kind of dehumanizing, actually. because it's almost implying that that autism is something that makes you inhuman, and that an autistic person is less than human. So the whole irony that efforts to humanize autistics end up dehumanizing them instead. However, that's just me. Like if an autistic person prefers person first language, I would definitely use person first language around them, because that's what makes them comfortable. But if a non-autistic person tries to police what language I use, I just don't have it. I won't tolerate their comfort. Like,
Right.
why do I need a reminder that I'm a person? I know I'm a person.
Yeah. Right. Well, we are running a little bit out of time. So, do you have any last words before I kind of give some closing remarks?
Honestly, when you make art and writing, lately I find myself being fueled by spite. I would see works that inaccurately portray autistics, such as a certain movie that came out 2 months ago that shall not be named. And I just feel like I just have an overwhelming mantra of, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us, and thank you guys online, whoever's watching. Make sure to keep track of when the next episode is, and I will always be live streaming this, and this will always be available after the live stream as well, for your to be able to view. So